Welcome back. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the State of the Nation address in just under an hour. The annual address will inform the nation at large about the current economic, social and political state of the Republic. The theme for this year's SONA is following up on our commitments, making your future work better. Joining us now for a preview of this year's SONA is Dr. Nthabiseng Moleko, who is the Development Economist at Stellenbosch Business School. Thank you so much for your time. It is President Cyril Ramaphosa's last State of the Nation address under his first term as president, and it is election year. So how politically fueled do you expect the State of the Nation address to be?
Well, it's elections coming up. We're hoping that election date would have been announced tonight, but it does appear that through his spokesperson, it will be within 15 days as of yesterday, or 14 days, I think it was. So I think it will be highly politically charged in that. For me, what that means is that there will be more promises.
Yeah.
There'll be more promises.
And actually talking about promises, I want to know what picture could the SONA paint over the Ramaphosa administration's 5 years? Because there are quite a lot of articles and analysis that are talking about empty promises for the past 5 years.
Well, there's a basis whereupon you must base the remarks. So they've done actually an assessment of the last two SONAs, 2022, 2023. Let's just focus on the last year, because I think imperative there, the bulk of the promises around the energy and the economic outcomes and also job creation. So he's got 62 targets overall, and of those, 56% or 37 of those were not met. That means more than half were not met. And then the 44% that were met are also on the sub side. So where did we really not meet our targets? I think from the economic backbone, a lot of the targets that deal with increasing job security, enhancing job and employment opportunities, the large portion of those were not met. The targets around the logistics infrastructure, Transnet freight, locomotives, and Ngqura and Durban terminal processes being finalized. I think one of the two was done, but the bulk of those regarding logistics were not met. And I think if you look at the social side, the protection side, it's around security, it's around safety, the issues around sexual offences courts, and the rate at which the NPA is able to transform competencies around that. And you see, again, there's some gains, but majority of the fails are in those areas. Why is this the case? You've got to look at the fundamentals. I think the competency within the state is key. If you don't have the requisite skill set, and I think making government work or making the services reach the people requires that you have competent officials, those who have the skills and the necessary capabilities. And the secondary aspect would be having a heart and a compassion for the South African people and a willingness to serve the people, even as a public official. So these are game changers. And even in the targets, you had a target that dealt with looking at the recruiting of people with the necessary skills. That was not done. So again, you go back to some of the fundamentals and you find that we are really not getting and reaching the target. Yeah,
you're talking about the competencies within the state being very important. Would this be the most opportune time now to pump in that privatization conversation into some of these government functions?
So I think that the state has a role to play that is quite different from the private sector, in that the private sector looks at maximization of profit, if I can just be theoretical. And the state looks at the public good. And so there's a different function and a different form of both of these entities, and they're needed in their different capacities. So if you started now to have the private sector playing the role of the state, many of the market failures that the private sector cannot reach, cannot deal with, have to be done by the state. That is why you have development agencies, development institutions, who, in addition to looking for sustainability from a financial perspective, so you want to see with state-owned entities return on equity. You want to see EBITDAs performing. You want to see financial performance. You want to see, for development finance institutions, low non-performing loans. You want to see manageable collection ratios and so forth. But you also want to see development impact. That is not the job of the private sector. So you've got to have development and state agencies that are concerned about equity, reach, and also redistribution, that being impact. So the private sector is not configured and conjured in that manner. So I think in the privatization discussion, we've got to look at what are the key strategic assets that are enablers that can help reduce the cost of doing business. And that is being set up by the state. Many agencies across the globe are set up by many countries across the first world economies, Asian economies, and particularly BRICS nations, where we see state-owned enterprises even being listed because of their performance, but they are managed well. There is good governance. They have competent staff. They are able to meet their own objectives primarily on their balance sheets, and they make the cost of business and doing business by the state agencies much cheaper, and they reduce the cost even if you're an exporter. So these are some of the functionalities of SOEs. Let's not erase state-owned enterprises because we've had a few years of badly run state-owned enterprises. If you look at the history of the Industrial Development Corporation, the reason why you had Mittal Steel, the reason why you had Sasol, the reason why you had many other entities that are successful and even listed now, state intervention. So state intervention is imperative when it's done well, executed with excellence and credibility, but let's get the right people in the game and in the team so that we can get value for money.
Well, as we're talking about state-owned enterprises, I mean, Transnet has become a bigger crisis now with a wider impact on the economy. And of course, there are calls for that SOE to get a bailout in the upcoming budget. Can we expect any commitments on SOEs, including Transnet?
Well, it's likely. I think there was an announcement around Transnet even last year from the Ministry of Finance. They need a bailout, and I think it is likely that the Minister of Finance and Treasury will heed to this. I think the issue is the conditionality around the bailouts and whether you see the necessary reforms in management and in ensuring that they have revenue generating and enhancing mechanisms within those entities so that they can actually stand on their own. The mismanagement that has caused many of these state-owned enterprises to rely now on National Treasury for bailouts is because of failure of governance systems and policies, but also the failure of management to ensure that they are finance at CFOs all the way down, but I think are generating revenue and able to ensure the sustainability of their balance sheets. I think that it can be done. We've seen the revival of Denel and others who are having new governance structures, new leaders at the helm. It can be done. It is possible. In terms of other bailouts, I think that Treasury is really constrained in terms of unencumbered cash. The growth in the country is less than a percentage point, and the tax revenue collection is on the basis of production. And so if we're not producing and we're not able to collect and carry the necessary revenue from particularly consumption, household incomes are constrained. We've had the most aggressive monetary policy in the last year that we've ever had. And so people are not buying as much. We'll see household expenditure reducing. Government expenditure due to austerity is also constrained. And so all the drivers that would drive up tax revenue in terms of collections are not necessarily going to be on the upside. So there will be interesting numbers we see at the budget, which is coming forward in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and we'll get the ink on the paper in terms of the SONA in about an hour. Thank you so much for your time and insights today, Dr. Nthabiseng. That was a development economist at Stellenbosch Business School in Nthabiseng Moleko.